Tonight, you are invited into something ancient, a path that Buddhist monks have walked for centuries, not to escape the mind, but to befriend it. What you're about to experience isn't a guided meditation. It's not a technique. It's something far simpler and far deeper. You're going to hear 10 Zen stories, not just old parables, but living doorways. Doorways that open, not outward, but inward, into that quiet place within you that's been patiently waiting to be seen. These stories have helped countless people calm their thoughts, ease their hearts, and surrender into the kind of rest that heals not just the body, but the soul. Here's the most extraordinary part. You don't have to do anything. Not meditate, not concentrate, not understand every word. Just listen, even if your mind won't settle, even if you feel restless or tired or numb. These stories will meet you exactly where you are. Because as the Buddha said, peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. And over the next 3 hours, you'll come to know what that really means. Not just as a phrase, but as a quiet truth felt deep in your being. Through tales of silent boats, wise monks, fierce tigers, and unexpected laughter, something inside you will begin to shift, gently, naturally, as if your whole being is exhaling. So now, make yourself comfortable, adjust your blanket, let your body soften, sink into the bed beneath you, feel its weight being held, and let's take a deep breath together, in and out. That's it. That was the first step. And now, your journey begins. Let me tell you the first story. Our first story unfolds on a river that gleamed like glass in the late afternoon light. It's the kind of river that holds everything in stillness: trees, sky, even the drifting mind. There was once a man who would row this river every evening. It was his sacred ritual, a time to leave the noise of the world behind and glide into quiet. He didn't row hard. He didn't rush. He just drifted, letting the current carry him, surrounded by gold-tinted water and the hush of dusk. One evening, as the man floated along, immersed in the peace of it all, he noticed another boat in the distance, coming straight toward him. At first, he gently called out, "Careful, please," but the boat didn't change course. He raised his voice a little. "Watch where you're going." Still, no response. Now, irritation crept in. He shouted, "Move aside. You're going to hit me." His heartbeat quickened. His peace shattered. And when the boat finally collided with his, he stood up, furious, ready to unleash his anger on the careless fool who'd ruined his evening. But then, he looked. There was no one in the boat. It was empty. Just a hollow vessel drifting on the river, pushed by the wind, carried by the current. And in that moment, his rage vanished. It had nowhere to go. He felt foolish. He felt quiet. He sat back down. The boats had still collided. Nothing about the event had changed, but everything in him had. The Buddha once said, "You will not be punished for your anger. You will be punished by your anger." And this simple encounter reveals that truth in the most direct way, because most of the time, what upsets us isn't what happens. It's what we think it means. We assume intent. We write stories in our heads. They did that to me. They don't care. They're rude. They should know better. And so we suffer. In Zen, this is called filling the boat, taking a neutral event and stuffing it with ego, assumptions, judgment. But the world is full of empty boats. The driver who cuts you off might be racing to the hospital. The friend who hasn't replied might be lost in grief. The stranger who ignored you might simply be lost in their own world. Yet we project meaning. We tell ourselves stories. We become angry at shadows. Mindfulness gives us the space to notice. Ah, I'm tightening. I'm clenching. I'm telling a story right now. And in that noticing, we step off the stage. We become the witness, not the actor. We see clearly. It was just an empty boat. Zen Master Dogen said, "To study the way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. And when the self is forgotten, anger doesn't stick. It rises and falls, like a ripple in water. Tonight, as you recall your day, is there a moment where someone's actions stirred frustration or hurt? Can you look again? Was the boat empty? If so, feel the weight lift. Feel how much lighter the mind becomes when it no longer has to defend, react, or explain. Peace comes from within, and often it begins the moment we stop filling boats with ghosts. Our next story begins high in the mountains, where the air is crisp and the silence carries the weight of centuries. In a small monastery hidden among the trees, a monk lived in the quiet devotion. Each day, he would walk the forest trails in silent reflection, his senses tuned to birdsong, breeze, and the teachings whispered by nature itself. One morning, as the monk walked along a narrow cliffside path, something changed. A sound, deep and raw, rumbled through the forest. He froze. It was the roar of a tiger. Turning quickly, he saw it, a powerful tiger charging through the trees, eyes locked on him, muscles rippling with intent. Without thinking, he ran. His robes flared behind him as he sprinted down the path, heart pounding, breath shallow. Ahead, the path ended at the edge of a cliff. There was no way forward, only down. Then he saw it, a vine dangling over the side. Without hesitation, he grabbed it and began to climb down the cliff face. But just as he caught his breath, he looked below. Another tiger, waiting at the bottom. He was suspended, one tiger above, another below. No escape, no safety, no plan. For a long moment, he just hung there, breathing. Then he noticed something, a wild strawberry plant growing from the rock beside him, and on it, a single ripe, red strawberry. He reached out, plucked the fruit, and took a bite. Sweet, fresh, perfect. For that one moment, there were no tigers, no fear, no past or future, only the taste of the strawberry. The Buddha said, "Do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment." And this story brings that truth to life with the clarity of mountain air. Because we all live between tigers. The tiger above, our regrets, mistakes, and what ifs. The tiger below, our fears, anxieties, and what might be. And in between, there is the strawberry, this breath, this heartbeat, this moment. Why is it so hard to stay here? Our minds are brilliant, but restless. They were built to scan for danger, to rehearse and replay, to plan and protect, useful for survival, but often a barrier to peace. So, we miss the strawberry. We miss the sunlight through leaves, the warmth of a cup of tea, the softness of our pillow. We live in the past or the future, but rarely here. Zen invites us back, again and again, to this moment, to what is. As Thich Nhat Hanh taught, the present moment is filled with joy and happiness. If you are attentive, you will see it. This doesn't mean ignoring the tigers. They are real, but they are not now. What is here now? Perhaps your breath, the sound of your heart, the stillness of night, the comfort of being safe for this one moment. That's the strawberry, and it is always within reach. Tonight, as you lie here, notice if your mind runs toward the past or flinches toward tomorrow. Then gently, lovingly, invite it back. Back to this inhale, this exhale, this strawberry. There is no path to peace. Peace is the path, and it is walked one breath at a time. Wind down. You've walked a long way tonight, through rivers and temples, past silent monks and laughing madmen, over cliffs, through teacups, into riddles, and out again. And now it is time to rest. Let everything settle. Let every word drift like leaves on water. There's no need to remember the stories. They have already done their work. What matters is this stillness now, this quiet after the tales, this hush at the edge of thought. The Buddha once said, when the mind is still, the truth shines. And you have tasted that tonight, not through effort, not through striving, but by allowing, by simply listening, by showing up. That is the way. Let your body sink deeper into the bed. Let your breath move in and out, soft and slow. Let the world, with all its noise, fall away. There is nothing left to figure out. No more riddles to solve. No need to chase enlightenment. You are already here. You are the cup. You are the river. You are the monk, the master, the moon. You are the story unfolding. Let it be quiet now. Let it be whole. And as you drift into sleep, may this final thought remain. You are enough. Not because of what you know, not because of what you've done, but simply because you are here, breathing, listening, alive. Let the dream begin, and let it be gentle. Let me tell you now about pain and the surprising way we deepen it. One afternoon, the Buddha sat beneath a canopy of trees, teaching a small group of disciples. The breeze stirred gently, carrying birdsong and the fragrance of the forest. A troubled student stepped forward, bowed, and said, Master, why do we suffer so much? Why does pain seem to follow us, no matter where we go? The Buddha looked at him with compassion and replied, Let me explain with a simple story. Imagine a man walking through the woods. Suddenly, an arrow pierces his side. The pain is immediate, sharp, undeniable. This is the first arrow. It represents the natural pain of life. The body aches. Loss comes. Things break. People leave. These are wounds we all receive simply by being alive. The student nodded. But then, the Buddha continued, the man picks up a second arrow and stabs himself again. This second arrow doesn't come from the world. It comes from the mind, from the stories, judgments, and resistance we attach to pain. The Buddha paused, letting the image settle. You see, he said, the first arrow is unavoidable, but the second arrow is optional. Let that truth settle into you, because we all get hit by life. We get sick. We lose things. We are disappointed. But what do we add to that? We say, this shouldn't be happening. I'll never recover. Why me? And each thought tightens the wound. Zen teaches us that pain is real, but suffering is built, and we build it with resistance, judgment, and endless mental replay. A headache becomes a spiral. What if it's serious? What if I can't focus? Why does this always happen to me? A rejection becomes, I'm not good enough. This proves it. I'll never be loved. Each of these is a second arrow. Each one we pick up ourselves. But there is another way. Mindfulness offers us a quiet path around that second blow. It doesn't deny the first arrow. It meets it with clarity and kindness. When pain arises, we can breathe. We can say, this is pain, not this is who I am, not this will never end, just this is what is. The Buddha said, what you think, you become. What you feel, you attract. What you imagine, you create. And so, we ask, what are you creating when you resist the first arrow? And what might you create if you simply allowed it to be? Zen master Charlotte Joko Beck once said, pain is not something to be avoided. It's something to be experienced, without resistance. To work with pain skillfully, we must stop fearing it like a predator. Instead, we sit beside it, curious. We breathe with it, not against it. We allow it, and in that allowing, the tight grip of suffering softens. Tonight, as you lie in stillness, notice your body. Is there discomfort? Is there heaviness? Can you meet it with tenderness, without stories or resistance? And if your mind brings worries, regrets, or memories, ask yourself gently, is this a second arrow? And if so, let it fall, because you don't need to hurt more than life already requires. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Let that truth guide you gently into sleep. This is a story about grief, but more than that, it is about what grief reveals when we open our hands and stop clutching at what cannot return. Long ago in ancient India, there lived a woman named Kisa Gotami. She was gentle, beloved in her village, and known for her devotion to her young son. Her life was quiet, tender, and full, until the unthinkable happened. One day, her child grew ill, and despite every effort, he died. But Kisa could not accept it. She couldn't believe that something so precious could simply end. In her anguish, she carried her son's body through the village, begging anyone and everyone, please, help me. There must be a way to bring him back. Most people turned away, unsure how to comfort a mother so deep in denial. Eventually, someone told her, go to the Buddha. If anyone can help, it is him. Kisa found the Buddha seated beneath a tree. She placed her child's lifeless body at his feet and pleaded, Master, please, I cannot live without him. Tell me what to do. The Buddha looked at her with great compassion. Then he said, there is a way, but first, you must bring me a single mustard seed from a household that has never known death. Kisa's eyes lit up. A mustard seed. That was easy. She rushed off. She knocked on the first door. Please, I need a mustard seed. Has anyone in your family ever died? The answer came gently. My husband died last year. She tried another house. We lost our daughter during the rains. Another and another. Every home she visited had known death, and slowly, as she moved through the village, her understanding began to shift. What she thought was a personal tragedy was a shared human truth. By the time the sun set, she returned to the Buddha, without a mustard seed, but with new eyes. I could not find a single house untouched by death, she whispered, and now I see this pain is not mine alone. The Buddha nodded. You have understood. He didn't give her a doctrine, he gave her an experience, because grief, in its rawest form, makes us feel utterly alone. But in truth, it connects us to everyone, everywhere. Every beating heart carries the mark of loss. Every family, every village, every life knows impermanence. The Buddha said, everything that has a beginning has an ending. Make your peace with that, and all will be well. But why do we resist this so fiercely? Because we crave permanence. We want our loved ones to stay. We want happiness to be solid. We want time to pause when things are beautiful. But life is not built that way. It flows. And our suffering comes not from that truth, but from fighting it. Kisa's healing began not when she let go of her child, but when she let go of the belief that she alone had suffered, that her grief was separate, special, unbearable. When she saw herself as part of the river, not apart from it, she could finally begin to float again. Tonight, if your heart is heavy with loss of a person, a relationship, a dream, can you pause and remember you're not alone? Others walk beside you. Even now, someone somewhere is feeling what you feel. And in that shared humanity, there is unexpected comfort. As the Buddha taught, in the end, only three things matter: how much you loved, how gently you lived, and how gracefully you let go of things not meant for you. Let that be your lantern in the dark. In a quiet village nestled between soft hills and rice fields, there lived an old farmer. He was not wealthy nor famous, but he was known for something else entirely: his calmness. Whether things went well or terribly wrong, his answer was always the same: maybe. One morning, the farmer woke to find his only horse had run away. It was a strong horse, vital for plowing and transport. The neighbors came rushing over. "What terrible luck," they said. "How will you work your land now?" The farmer simply shrugged and replied, "Maybe." The next day, the horse returned, but it wasn't alone. It brought with it 3 wild horses from the hills. The neighbors gathered again. "What wonderful luck!" they exclaimed. "Now you have 4 horses." The farmer nodded. "Maybe." A few days later, the farmer's son tried to ride one of the wild horses. He was thrown violently to the ground and broke his leg. Again, the villagers came. "This is awful," they said. "Your son won't be able to help on the farm now." The farmer's voice, as always, was steady. "Maybe." Weeks passed. War broke out. Soldiers came to the village to conscript all able-bodied young men. But because of his injury, the farmer's son was left behind. Now, the neighbors wept with a mix of sadness and admiration. "You are so lucky," they said. "Your son is safe." The old man looked at them, his eyes gentle. "Maybe." This is the wisdom of not knowing, the wisdom of not jumping to conclusions. The Buddha taught, nothing is permanent. Everything is subject to change. Being is always becoming. The farmer lived this teaching, not in words, but in the way he moved through life. Why do we rush to judge events as good or bad? Because the mind craves certainty. It wants to sort the world into neat categories: fortunate, unfortunate, success, failure, gain, loss. But the truth is, we never see the full picture. What seems like disaster may hold a hidden gift. What seems like a blessing may carry a quiet cost. Zen invites us to hold life loosely. This doesn't mean we stop feeling. The farmer wasn't numb. He still tended his crops, still cared for his son. But he didn't cling to fixed meanings. He stayed open, curious. There is a word for this in Zen: equanimity, a calm abiding that isn't swayed by passing winds. Because all things pass: the victory, the failure, the heartbreak, the joy. Even this moment, no matter how sweet or bitter, will change. So when life throws you something unexpected, you don't have to label it right away. You can pause, breathe, and say, like the farmer, maybe. Tonight, as you reflect on recent events in your life, news that startled you, changes that unsettled you, can you step back for a moment? Can you release the rush to define it? Can you leave space for the unfolding? Because sometimes what feels like an ending is only the middle of a story still being written. Let go of the labels. Let go of the tight grip. With our thoughts, we make the world. And with gentler thoughts, we allow that world to surprise us. Not every storm begins with thunder. Some begin with silence and a single burning thought. One day, as the Buddha sat beneath a tree teaching his disciples, a man approached, his face twisted with fury. He had heard of the Buddha's growing influence, and it unsettled him. He feared what he didn't understand, and so he came with anger as his weapon. "You're a fraud," the man shouted. "You pretend to be wise, but you're deceiving people with soft words and empty promises." The Buddha remained still. The man stepped closer. "Say something. Defend yourself." But the Buddha didn't flinch. His eyes were clear, his breath steady, his presence like a still pond untouched by a stone. This silence only enraged the man more. "You sit there like you're better than me, but you're not. You're a coward who hides behind smiles." Still, the Buddha did not react. Finally, the man, exhausted from his own fire, demanded, "Why do you say nothing? Don't you care what I think of you?" The Buddha looked at him with great kindness and spoke softly. "If someone offers you a gift and you choose not to accept it, who does the gift belong to?" The man blinked, caught off guard. "To the one who offered it," he replied. "Exactly," the Buddha said. "And so it is with your anger. You offer it, but I do not accept. Therefore, it remains yours." The man was stunned. His rage, so carefully sharpened, had found no target. He saw that while he had been consumed by hatred, the Buddha had remained free. The Buddha continued, "Anger is like a hot coal you pick up to throw at someone else, but in doing so, you burn yourself first." The man bowed his head. "How can I be like you?" he asked. "How can I find peace?" And the Buddha answered, "By letting go of the coal." This story holds a mirror to our own lives. How often do we carry anger long after the moment has passed? How many times do we rehearse arguments in our minds, carry grudges, feel righteous in our fury? Zen teaches that we are not punished for our anger. We are punished by our anger. It twists our thoughts, it hardens our breath, it drains our peace. We confuse letting go of anger with letting someone get away with it. But letting go isn't about excusing others. It's about freeing ourselves. There is strength in silence. There is power in non-reactivity. There is deep dignity in choosing peace over the endless cycle of offense and defense. Tonight, if any anger still flickers inside you, toward yourself, toward someone else, can you hold it gently, without judgment? Can you notice how it feels in your body? Tight jaw, rapid breath, hot chest, and then, can you set it down? Not because it's wrong, but because you are tired of holding it. As the Buddha said, hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love. This is the eternal law. You don't have to accept the coal. You don't have to carry the fire. Choose the quieter path. Let your peace remain yours. In a quiet monastery nestled in the misty mountains, there lived an old monk known not just for his teachings, but for his presence. He moved slowly, spoke softly, and smiled often. His students admired him deeply, yet often found his lessons both simple and endlessly profound. Each afternoon, they gathered for tea. It was a ritual, a pause in the day when everything slowed to the rhythm of boiling water and ceramic cups. One day, as they sat together, in the dim glow of late sunlight. The monk held up his teacup and gazed at it for a long time. The students waited. Finally, the monk spoke. "This teacup," he said gently, "is already broken." The students blinked in confusion. The cup was whole, intact, beautiful even. One brave student asked, "But master, it isn't broken. It's perfectly fine." The monk smiled. "Yes, it is. But one day, it will fall, or chip, or be forgotten on a shelf. That is its nature. And so, in my mind, I've already let it go." He set the cup down with care. "When I believe it will last forever, I grow attached. I fear its loss. I grasp. But when I know it's already broken, I am free to enjoy it completely." This story, like the cup, is simple on the surface, but inside, it holds the heart of Zen, because what is true of a teacup is true of everything: your favorite song, your youth, your home, your health, your loved ones, even this very moment. They are all already broken, not in a tragic way, but in a truthful one. Nothing lasts, nothing stays. And that is not a reason for despair. It is an invitation to cherish. The Buddha taught all conditioned things are impermanent. When one sees this with insight, one becomes disenchanted with suffering. Suffering often comes not from loss itself, but from our resistance to loss, our refusal to accept that everything we love will one day change. We cling, we grip tightly to people, experiences, memories, as if we could freeze them in time. But time moves anyway. Zen teaches us not to fight impermanence, but to dance with it. The monk didn't love the teacup less because he knew it would one day break. He loved it more because he saw its beauty clearly, unclouded by illusion. Because he knew this moment is the only one I ever get with this cup. And so it is with everything we love. Tonight, take a quiet look at your own life. What teacups are you clinging to? A relationship you fear losing? A body that's changing? A chapter that's ending? Can you try, just for a breath, to see them through the monk's eyes? Already broken, already gone, and because of that, even more precious now. Let that awareness deepen your appreciation, not your fear. As the Buddha said, the trouble is, you think you have time, but the beauty is, you have this time, this breath, this heartbeat, this cup. Cherish it. In a quiet village, dusted with sunlight and sandalwood, the Buddha once arrived to rest and teach. As always, his presence drew people from every walk of life: beggars, scholars, farmers, and on this day, a wealthy merchant. The merchant was deeply moved by the Buddha's words. He had never known such calm, such clarity, and so he returned home, determined to offer something worthy. He selected the finest robe he owned, woven silk, dyed with rare colors, embroidered with gold thread. It was not just expensive, it was extravagant. A robe meant for kings. He returned to the Buddha, bowed deeply, and offered the robe with reverence. "Please, master," he said, "accept this as a sign of my gratitude." The Buddha looked at the garment, then looked at the man with a warm, steady gaze. "Thank you," he said softly, "but I cannot accept this." The merchant was stunned. "But why?" The Buddha replied, "I already have a robe. It is enough." The merchant tried again. "But surely, someone as revered as you deserves the best." The Buddha smiled. "If you truly wish to honor me, find someone who has no robe at all. Give this to someone who is cold, who shivers at night, who has nothing. That would bring greater joy, both to them and to you." The merchant was silent. Then, slowly, he nodded. He found a man living at the edge of the village, sleeping beneath straw and threadbare cloth. The robe was wrapped around him. The man wept with gratitude, and something strange happened. The merchant, who had given so much in his life, felt, for the first time, full. The next day, he returned to the Buddha and said, "You were right. That act brought me more joy than all my giving before." The Buddha said, "Generosity brings happiness at every stage. The intention, the act, and the memory of having given." This story shows us that giving is not about what we offer, it's about why we offer it and to whom. In our world, generosity is often tangled in ego. We give to be seen. We give to feel virtuous. We give upward to those who already have, rather than outward to those in need. But true generosity is quiet, discerning. It asks not, "What gift will impress?" but "Where is it most needed?" The Buddha lived simply, not out of deprivation, but out of freedom. He knew what was enough. Zen teaches that the root of suffering is craving, not just for things, but for significance, praise, approval. Generosity cuts through that craving. It opens us, softens us, and it reminds us that we are part of a greater whole. There is a word in Buddhist practice, dana. It means giving not as transaction, but as transformation. It includes not just money, but time, not just things, but presence, not just food, but listening, care, a moment of attention. Tonight, as you rest, consider, what do you have that someone else may lack? What could you give? Not for applause, not for worthiness, but simply out of love. And just as important, can you receive too, with humility, with grace, with gratitude? As the Buddha said, "If you knew what I know about the power of giving, you would not let a single day pass without sharing something. Even now, in this quiet hour, you're giving something precious, your attention, your time, your willingness to listen. Let that be a reminder. You have more to offer than you think." Two monks were walking together side by side on a muddy road during the rainy season. One was older, seasoned in practice, the other younger, eager, disciplined, still clinging tightly to every rule. As they rounded a bend, they came upon a wide puddle, blocking the path. Standing at the edge was a young woman, dressed in fine silk. She looked distressed, afraid to cross and ruin her clothing. Without hesitation, the older monk stepped forward, gently lifted the woman in his arms, and carried her across to dry ground. She bowed in gratitude and went on her way. The younger monk said nothing, but inside, he boiled. They walked for hours in silence. The younger monk's thoughts spiraled. We took a vow not to touch women. He broke the rule. Why didn't he hesitate? What does this say about him? What does it say about me? Finally, unable to contain himself, the younger monk blurted out, "Brother, as monks, we are not supposed to go near women, especially not touch them. Why did you carry her?" The older monk looked at him kindly and replied, "I put her down hours ago. Are you still carrying her?" The words landed like a stone in still water, because the younger monk realized it was not the older monk who had broken the vow. It was he who had broken his peace. One of them had helped a woman and moved on. The other had carried her, not in his arms, but in his mind. This is the weight of mental baggage, and we all do it. Someone says something offhandedly, and we carry it. A mistake from last week, and we replay it. A moment of discomfort, and we chew on it for days. Zen teaches that the past only exists if we bring it with us. It has no weight of its own, only the grip we maintain around it. The Buddha said, let go of the past, let go of the future, let go of the present, and cross over to the farther shore of existence. But what keeps us clinging? First, it's the illusion of control. We believe if we analyze something enough, we'll finally resolve it. Second, it's identity. We cling to events that reinforce our idea of who we are. Third, it's habit. The mind, like a wheel, spins unless we gently place a hand to stop it. But the good news is this: you can set it down. You don't need permission. You don't need to finish the story. Just stop carrying. Tonight, is there something you've been holding in your mind all day? A comment that stung? A regret you've polished smooth from overthinking? Can you place it down like a stone beside the path? Let it be. Let it belong to the past, because you're here now, and the present moment is lighter without it. As the Buddha said, happiness never decreases by being shared, and neither does peace, especially when you share it with yourself. Sleep, unburdened. In the center of a bustling city stood a great temple, ancient, golden roofed, surrounded by the noise of modern life. Crowds passed by every day, buses rumbled, vendors called out, car horns sang their relentless chorus. And yet, inside the temple, there was a deep and abiding silence. Not the absence of sound, but something else, something deeper, a stillness that seemed to absorb all noise and turn it into peace. One day, a young musician came to visit. Curious and sensitive to sound, he sat inside the temple, closed his eyes, and listened. At first he heard the city, faintly, then the shuffling of shoes, murmurs of visitors, the creak of old wooden beams. But underneath all of that, something else, a tiny, rhythmic chirp, a cricket. Intrigued, the musician followed the sound and found it coming from a small crack in one of the ancient temple pillars. A cricket had made its home there. He was amazed. Later, he approached an old monk sweeping the temple steps. Venerable one, the musician asked, have you heard the cricket living in your temple? The monk smiled. Yes, he's been with us for many seasons. But how is it, the young man asked, that I can hear a cricket in all this noise? The monk reached into his robe and took out a small coin. He tossed it gently onto the stone floor. Clink. All heads turned. You see, the monk said, people hear what they are listening for. The coin makes no more sound than the cricket, but the mind is trained to hear money, not silence. He paused, eyes kind. To hear what others miss, you must quiet what others never do. Silence is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of attention. This is the heart of the story. The world is full of crickets, whispers of intuition, moments of clarity, the soft tug of awareness, asking you to slow down, breathe, and notice. But we're trained to listen for coins, for the loud, the urgent, the valuable, and so we miss what is always here. Zen calls this ma, the space between things, the pause that gives meaning. In music, it's the silence between notes that makes melody. In speech, it's the stillness that gives words their weight. Our minds are often filled with what Zen calls monkey mind, thoughts jumping from branch to branch, rarely still. And in that noise, the subtle is lost. But with practice, we can return through breath, through awareness, through choosing again and again to listen deeper. The Buddha said, the quieter you become, the more you can hear, not just sounds, but truths, not just silence, but yourself. Tonight, as you lie in stillness, notice the quiet, not the absence of things, but what remains when you stop chasing them. Can you hear your heartbeat? The gentle rhythm of your breath, the soft hum of life beneath the surface. These are your crickets, and they are always singing. Let the world be noisy. Let your mind grow still. The deepest wisdom speaks in whispers. There was once a Zen master who traveled often with his students, wandering on foot through hills and valleys, always moving slowly, always listening to the wind. One rainy season, the path they walked became thick with mud. Their robes grew heavy with dampness. Each step was a quiet struggle, the earth clinging to their sandals. After hours of walking, they came upon a breathtaking temple on a hillside. Its gates stood tall. The air smelled of incense. Inside, monks in polished robes moved with perfect grace, every chant measured, every bow exact. The students were captivated. This, one whispered, must be the true path. When the ceremonies ended, they gathered around their master and asked, "Is this not what we should strive for? Such purity, such order, such devotion." The Zen master didn't answer. Instead, he turned and walked back down the hill to the muddy road they had traveled. He knelt in the wet earth. He dipped his hand into the mud, and with one finger, he drew a circle. "This," he said quietly, "is also the way." The students fell silent because in that moment they understood. Enlightenment does not live only in the polished and the perfect. It lives in the dirt, the discomfort, the ordinary mess of daily life. The Buddha said, "If you cannot find the truth right where you are, where else do you expect to find it?" We are conditioned to seek wisdom in sacred places, temples, books, rituals, teachers. But Zen teaches the sacred is already here, in the dishes in your sink, in the traffic jam, in the tears that come for no reason. The mud is not separate from the path. It is the path. Why do we miss this? Because we chase a fantasy of spiritual perfection, clean, clear, and free from trouble. But real practice doesn't lift us above life. It drops us right into the middle of it, with open eyes and a soft heart. In Japanese aesthetics, there is a word, wabi-sabi, the beauty found in imperfection, impermanence, and the unpolished. A cracked bowl, an aging face, a wild garden. These are not broken, they are honest. The Zen master's circle in the mud was not art, it was reminder. That truth is not something we arrive at, pristine and sparkling. It is something we touch, right here, with muddy hands. Tonight, consider, what parts of your life have you labeled as not spiritual, too messy, or not enough? Can you draw a circle there? Can you whisper, "This too is the way"? Because when we stop trying to step around the mud and start walking through it, barefoot, mindful, open, we find something unexpected. The mud teaches, the dirt grounds, the mess is sacred, and the way has always been right under our feet. In ancient China, there lived a master archer whose arrows never missed their mark. His fame reached every province, and even the emperor had heard tales of his skill. But the archer himself remained humble, always practicing, always silent. One day, a young archer sought him out. "Master," he said, bowing deeply, "I've trained for many years. I want to reach the level you've attained. Please, teach me your secret." The master studied the young man. Then, without a word, he said, "Meet me tomorrow, at dawn, on the cliff." The next morning, the young archer arrived, expecting targets, techniques, instructions. Instead, the master led him to the very edge of a towering cliff, where the valley opened beneath them like a great mouth. Stand here, the master said, and shoot. The young man hesitated. The wind howled. The ground dropped away. He tried to lift his bow, but his hands trembled. His breath caught. His focus shattered. I can't, he whispered. It's too high. I'm too afraid. The master nodded. That, he said, is the secret. When I shoot, there is no cliff, no audience, no self. There is only bow, arrow, breath, and target. He stepped forward, drew his bow, and let an arrow fly, calm as still water. You are divided, he told the young man. Part of you aims. Another part fears falling. One part wants success. Another fears failure. The arrow cannot fly true through a split mind. In Zen, this is known as mushin, no mind, not emptiness of thought, but emptiness of distraction, a state of pure presence where action and awareness are one. You have felt this before, in a moment of total focus, when time disappeared, when you were so absorbed in what you were doing that the you doing it faded. That is the cliff's edge. That is the target. That is the way, the Buddha said. Your work is to discover your world, and then with all your heart, give yourself to it. Most of us give ourselves in pieces. We act while doubting. We speak while editing. We create while worrying about the result. But Zen invites something deeper, not performance, but unity, not trying harder, but being whole. The young archer had the skill. What he lacked was presence. Tonight, ask yourself, where are you split? When you speak, are you half elsewhere? When you rest, are you still solving problems? When you reach for your goal, do you already fear the fall? Can you stand at the edge of your own life, steady, undivided? Can you shoot not for success or applause, but simply as the next breath? The master archer didn't teach technique. He revealed a truth. When we bring our whole selves to the moment, when we become one with the task, the arrow flies true, and the cliff becomes just another place to breathe. In a quiet village, tucked between two mountains, a large stone had fallen into the main road. No one knew when it had come down, perhaps during the last rainstorm, or perhaps long before, but there it was, massive, immovable, right in the middle of everything. The villagers tried everything. The strongest men pushed. The cleverest tried levers. They brought tools to chip away at it, but the stone was too hard. They tried digging around it, hoping to roll it aside, but the earth held it firm. Frustration grew. Eventually, they sought the help of a nearby Zen master, known for his wisdom and unconventional ways. The master arrived, circled the stone in silence, and finally asked one simple question. Why does it have to be moved? The villagers blinked. Because it blocks the road, someone said. The master nodded. Yes, this road. Then he pointed to the side, where a narrow space curved gently through a field. Perhaps, he said, the road is ready to change. And with that, he began clearing a new path. Others joined. Within hours, a smooth trail had been formed, winding peacefully around the boulder. The stone remained, but the obstacle was gone. And over time, something unexpected happened. Children climbed the stone and played. Travelers sat in its shade. It became a landmark, a place to pause, to rest, to meet. The problem had become part of the village's beauty. The Buddha said, as the fletcher shapes his arrows, so the wise shape their thoughts. This story is not about a rock. It's about how we meet the challenges in our lives. Because how often do we insist this must move when the real shift needed is in our thinking? We see a problem and we fixate. This has to go. This shouldn't be here. This is in my way. But Zen asks us, is it the problem or our relationship to it? What if the stone is not the block to the path, but the invitation to find a better one? In Buddhism, this is known as right view, not fixing the world to match our expectations, but seeing with clarity and creativity. Why do we resist this? Because we cling to the familiar. We want the path to look how we imagined. We mistake force for wisdom. But sometimes the wisest thing is to ask, what if I go around? Tonight, consider the stone in your own life, a situation that won't budge, a person who won't change, an outcome that seems impossible. Have you been trying to move it with sheer will? What might happen if you stepped back and asked, is there another way? Not easier, not lesser, just different. Sometimes the most sacred shift is not in the world, but in how we see it. The Zen master didn't remove the stone. He revealed a new perspective. And the stone? It stayed, but it stopped being a problem. Let your obstacles become part of your landscape. Two monks, Tanzan and Aikido, were traveling on foot through the countryside, their sandals thick with mud from days of rain. The path was slow, the sky gray, but their spirits were steady. As they reached a bend in the road, they came upon a young woman in a silk kimono. She stood before a deep puddle, clearly distressed. She looked at the mud, then at her clothes, uncertain how to cross without ruining them. Without a word, Tanzan stepped forward, lifted her gently into his arms, carried her across the water, and set her down on the dry path ahead. She bowed with gratitude. Tanzan nodded, and the monks continued walking. For hours, they walked in silence, but Aikido was not at peace. His thoughts churned. We took a vow not to touch women. How could he break that rule so casually? What does this mean about his discipline? Or mine? Finally, Aikido could hold it in no longer. He turned and said, Brother, we are monks. We are not to go near women, especially not touch them. Why did you carry her? Tanzan looked at him with calm eyes and replied, I put her down hours ago. Are you still carrying her? That reply held the weight of a bell striking in a silent hall. Because Aikido saw the truth, Tanzan had responded with compassion and moved on. But Aikido had been carrying the woman in his mind the entire time. And this is what we all do. We carry the past, not in our hands, but in our thoughts. We replay conversations. We rehearse regrets. We hold on to moments long after they've ended. Zen teaches us that memory is not the enemy. Clinging is. The Buddha said, let go of the past, let go of the future, let go of the present, and cross over to the farther shore of existence. The farther shore is not a distant land. It is this moment, uncluttered, unburdened, free. But why is it so hard to let go? Because part of us believes that replaying will fix something, that if we just think it through enough, we'll finally understand, that our judgment is a shield and our rumination a virtue. But most of the time, it is simply heavy. Zen calls this mental proliferation, papanka, the mind creating stories upon stories, spirals upon spirals. Like Aikido, we become trapped in thought while the moment continues on without us. So tonight, ask gently, what are you still carrying? A criticism from this morning? An old hurt from last year? A rule you've clung to more than the spirit behind it? Can you lay it down? Not with anger, not with denial, but with tenderness, like setting down a burden that was never yours to hold for so long. Let your mind become like Tanzan's, clear, responsive, and light. Compassion without clinging, action without attachment, presence without judgment. The Buddha said, in the end, only three things matter: how much you loved, how gently you lived, and how gracefully you let go of things not meant for you. Grace doesn't mean forgetting. It means walking forward without dragging the past behind you. Sleep now, with empty hands and a quiet heart. There is a question in Zen, one that cannot be answered with words, only with presence. It is this: what is the sound of one hand? It was posed by the great master Hakuin, known for training his students not through lectures, but through silence, paradox, and piercing simplicity. One day, a young monk came to study with him. After some time, Hakuin gave the monk this riddle, known as a koan. You must discover the sound of one hand, he said. Until you do, you will not understand Zen. The monk bowed and went away to meditate. He sat by rivers, beneath trees, in the hush of early morning and late night, turning the question over and over in his mind. A few days later, he returned, hopeful. Master, he said, I believe the sound of one hand is the wind moving through the pines. Hakuin shook his head. That is still the sound of two things. The monk went back. Another week passed. He returned again. It is the cry of a bird in the forest. No, said Hakuin, you're still listening with the mind. And so the monk continued, offering answers, metaphors, poetry. Each one was gently refused. Eventually, the monk stopped searching for clever responses. He stopped trying to be right. He let the question enter his bones. And then, one morning in deep meditation, something shifted. The question was no longer a riddle. It was a doorway, and he stepped through. He returned to the master. Hakuin asked, what is the sound of one hand? This time the monk did not speak. He simply was the answer. And Hakuin smiled, because the point was never to find a clever response. It was to drop the need for one. Zen is not about having the right words. It's about being the truth before you can name it. The Buddha said, the finger pointing at the moon is not the moon. And yet, we so often mistake the finger for the thing itself. We accumulate teachings, texts, techniques. We build towers of understanding, but still, we feel distant from peace. Why? Because peace is not found in explanation. It is found in experience. Zen uses koans not to confuse, but to collapse the mind, to short-circuit the urge to analyze, to break the habit of answering and awaken the deeper habit of seeing. What is the sound of one hand? It cannot be grasped. It must be heard with your whole being. Tonight, rather than seeking meaning, can you rest in mystery? Can you let your thoughts pass like clouds and dwell in the open sky beneath them? Can you drop the question and become the listening? As the Buddha said, don't just do something. Sit there, be still, be here, and let the answer reveal itself in silence. Ryokan was a monk unlike any other. He lived alone in a tiny hut on the mountainside. He had no disciples, no temple, and no possessions, except for a begging bowl, a robe, and a smile so gentle that birds often landed beside him as he meditated. Though he had nothing, Ryokan's heart was full. He wrote poetry, played with children, sat for hours beneath the moon. His life was simple, but his joy was vast. One night, while he was away gathering firewood, a thief broke into his hut. There was nothing to steal. No silver, no food, no furniture, just an empty bowl and a thin robe folded beside his mat. Ryokan returned and saw the thief standing in his doorway. The two men locked eyes. Then Ryokan said softly, "You've come a long way to visit me. You shouldn't leave empty-handed. Here, take my robe." He handed the only garment he had to the thief, who, confused and speechless, took it and fled into the forest. Ryokan stood there, naked, under the night sky. Then he looked up at the full moon, rising above the trees, and whispered, "Poor fellow, I wish I could have given him the moon." This is not a story about poverty. It's a story about richness, because Ryokan had something the thief could not steal, something no one could. He had freedom, not the kind written into law, but the kind found in the absence of clinging. He was free from wanting, free from resisting, free from measuring his life by what he had or what he'd lost. The Buddha said, "Health is the greatest gift. Contentment is the greatest wealth." But why is it so hard for us to feel content? Because we look for fulfillment in what we can possess, not in what we can see. We scroll, we shop, we compare. All the while, the moon rises overhead, unnoticed. Zen teaches that the deepest beauty is already given. The breath in your chest, the warmth of your bed, the quiet between thoughts, the moon outside your window right now. But to see these things, you must first empty your hands. We are like the thief, searching for treasures in places they don't exist. Ryokan reminds us, true wealth is not in accumulation, but in appreciation. He didn't hate the thief. He pitied him, because someone who needs to steal has missed the moon entirely. Tonight, pause. Look around, not with the eyes of desire, but of gratitude. What in your life is freely given? What has been waiting for you to notice? Perhaps it's the softness of your pillow, the quiet in the room, the rise and fall of your breath. These are your moonlit gifts, and you don't need to earn them. Just receive them, as Ryokan did, bare, unguarded, and smiling beneath the stars. A young seeker had spent years reading sacred texts, attending teachings, and traveling from teacher to teacher. He had studied yoga, tried mantra, practiced breath control, and read the sutras in 3 languages, but something still felt missing. Each path pointed in a different direction. Each teacher offered a different promise. And so, the seeker grew anxious, unsure which way to go. One day, he heard of a Zen master living by a river known for his clarity. He made the journey, and when he arrived, he poured out his heart. "Master," he said, "I've studied so much, but the more I learn, the more confused I become. Which path is the true one? Which practice will bring me to awakening?" The master smiled and gestured to the river. "Come," he said. They walked to the edge, where a number of boats were tied, some old and wooden, some sleek and new, some meant for fishing, others for passengers. The master asked, "Which of these is the right boat?" The seeker hesitated. "For what purpose?" he asked. The master nodded, pleased. "Exactly," he said. "Without knowing your destination, how can you choose the proper vessel?" He paused. "And even more important, once you reach the other shore, will you still carry the boat on your back?" The seeker was quiet. The lesson was clear. Not every boat is meant for every river. Not every teaching fits every soul. and no boat is meant to be clung to once the crossing is complete. The Buddha said, I teach one thing and one thing only, suffering and the end of suffering. Everything else is a raft. Zen teaches us to use practices wisely, not worship them, to measure a path not by its tradition or prestige, but by its effect on your heart. Does it bring peace? Does it increase compassion? Does it help you live with awareness and courage? If so, use it, and when it no longer serves, bow to it and let it go. We often get lost in comparison. We want the best teacher, the most advanced technique, the fastest route. But awakening is not a race. It is a remembering. And the boat that works for you might look nothing like someone else's. Tonight, if you've been doubting your progress or feeling lost on your path, pause. Instead of asking, am I on the right path? Ask, am I walking with presence? Because the path is not separate from the step you're taking now. And the teaching you need most is usually the one that meets you gently, simply, right where you are. Let your path be yours. Row with sincerity. Adjust your course as needed. And when you arrive, don't forget to look up, step out, and leave the boat behind. The river will remember, and so will you. A university professor came to visit a Zen master. He had studied for decades philosophy, religion, psychology, and had written entire volumes comparing spiritual traditions. He was proud of his intellect and also, quietly, restless. I've come to learn about Zen, he said. I've read much, but I want to understand more deeply. The master nodded, smiled, and said, let us have tea. He moved slowly, preparing the kettle with care. The professor continued to talk, explaining what he knew, quoting texts, weaving theories together like fine thread. When the tea was ready, the master placed a cup before the professor and began to pour. The cup filled, then it overflowed, and the tea spilled onto the table, then onto the professor's robe. Stop, the professor cried. The cup is already full. The master paused, then looked up and said calmly, exactly, and so are you. How can I show you Zen if you first don't empty your cup? The professor sat in stunned silence, because he realized in that moment his knowledge was not a bridge, it was a wall. Zen calls this beginner's mind, a state of openness, of curiosity, of not knowing. When the mind is full of answers, it has no room left for wonder. The Buddha said, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. We often think wisdom means knowing more, but Zen teaches sometimes wisdom is knowing less, or at least holding what we know lightly, like a leaf, not a sword. Why do we cling so tightly to what we think we know? Because it feels safe, certain, like armor in a world that is unpredictable. But this armor also weighs us down. It blocks the present. It filters every experience through past opinions. It dulls the sharp edge of reality. To truly learn, to truly see, we must first unlearn. We must allow the moment to arrive unfiltered. We must meet life not with answers, but with presence. Tonight, consider, where is your cup full? Do you enter conversations already planning your reply? Do you judge new experiences through old categories? Do you assume rather than ask? Can you, just for this moment, empty a little? Let go of needing to be right. Let go of evaluating. Let go of naming. Just listen to the breath, to this story, to the quiet within you. Zen is not something to be understood. It is something to be experienced with a fresh mind and an open heart. As the Buddha said, empty your boat of water. It will go lightly and swiftly. So too with your mind. Empty it of what clutters, and you may be surprised what lightness arrives. A great samurai warrior, known across the land for his skill and honor, had grown restless. He had faced many battles and conquered many foes. But now, in his later years, a deeper question began to stir within him. What lies beyond strength? What is the nature of heaven and hell? He set out to find answers, not in books, but in presence. And so, he traveled to a remote Zen temple, said to be home to a master of rare wisdom. When he arrived, he stood tall, sword at his side, armor gleaming. The old master came out to greet him, robes simple, posture humble. The samurai bowed slightly and asked, Master, tell me, what is heaven and what is hell? The master looked up at the warrior and laughed, not kindly, not gently, a deep, mocking laugh. You, he said, you call yourself a samurai? You're nothing but a brute, a child with a blade. Look at you, puffed up in metal, like a rooster pretending to be a dragon. The samurai's face turned red. His hand gripped the hilt of his sword. Anger surged through him, hot and fast. He raised his blade, ready to strike. Just then, the master looked him in the eye and said softly, That is hell. The words froze the samurai mid-motion, and in that instant, he understood. Hell was not a place. It was a state, a moment of blind reaction, of pride wounded, of ego inflamed. His sword lowered. His breath returned. His eyes softened. He dropped to his knees. Then, what is heaven? He whispered. The master reached out, touched his shoulder, and said gently, This is heaven. Heaven and hell are not distant afterlives. They are choices made in every moment. The Buddha said, Our life is the creation of our mind. And truly, it is. We create hell when we cling to anger, when we defend our image, when we let pride speak louder than wisdom. We create heaven when we breathe, soften, and meet the moment with awareness. Why do we so often live in hell? Because we forget we have a choice. We believe our emotions must be obeyed. We believe our reactions define us. We believe our worth is tied to how others see us. But Zen teaches, you are not your first reaction. You are the awareness that sees it. And in that space, you are free. Tonight, reflect. Has someone insulted you recently? Criticized you? Ignored you? Did you tighten? Burn? Reach for your metaphorical sword? If so, that was hell. But did you pause? Breathe? Refrain? Even for a second? That was heaven. The gates are always near. They swing open and closed with every thought, every breath, every choice. As the Buddha said, you will not be punished for your anger. You will be punished by your anger. The samurai's journey was not across land. It was across the narrow bridge between rage and realization. May you walk that same bridge with grace. Late one night, a thief broke into a small mountain hut, expecting to find valuables. But the hut belonged to a Zen master, and the master had almost nothing, just a mat, a blanket, a robe, a wooden bowl, a candle, a pot for tea. The thief searched, frustrated. There was nothing worth stealing. Then, from the shadowed corner, a voice spoke. You've come a long way, the master said softly. You shouldn't leave empty-handed. Startled, the thief turned, but the old monk didn't move. He simply reached for the robe beside him, held it out, and said, Here, take this. The thief, confused, took the robe and fled into the darkness. The master stood at the doorway, watching the man disappear down the path. He looked up at the sky, where the moon shone full and luminous, and he whispered, "If only I could have given him this moon." The robe was gone, but the master still had everything because he had nothing to lose. This is the paradox of Zen. When you release attachment, you are no longer vulnerable to loss, and you become, quietly, effortlessly, free. The Buddha said, "Let us rise and be thankful, for if we didn't learn much today, at least we learned a little. And if we didn't learn a little, at least we didn't get sick. And if we did get sick, at least we didn't die. So let us all be thankful." Gratitude doesn't require abundance, it requires presence. Ryokan, another Zen poet, said it like this: "I watch the moonlight spill across my floor, and I smile. The thief took a robe, but he missed the moonlight, the stillness, the contentment, the treasure that cannot be taken. So often, we are the thief. We move through life grasping for what we think we lack: more money, more praise, more control. And we overlook the vast, silent beauty already around us. We ignore the moon because we're chasing coins. But the Zen master teaches us what cannot be stolen is what matters most. Generosity, when offered from emptiness, is inexhaustible. Peace, when unguarded, deepens. Joy, when not possessed, multiplies. Tonight, pause and look around. What in your life is freely given? The breath in your lungs, the breeze outside your window, the comfort of knowing you are safe, here, in this moment. These are your moon gifts. You do not have to earn them. You only have to notice. And perhaps, as you rest, you too can whisper, "If only I could have given them this moon." There is a saying in Zen, "Only when the cup is empty can it be filled." You've heard this before, perhaps as a metaphor, perhaps as advice. But tonight, let's return to it again, not as a concept, but as a lived truth. There was once a monk who traveled long to meet a master known for his deep silence. The monk had studied elsewhere. He had read sutras, practiced breathing, fasted, chanted, bowed thousands of times. He arrived eager, perhaps too eager. "I have come to learn the highest teachings," he said. "I've prepared for years." The master nodded and offered him tea. As he poured, the monk spoke quickly about the nature of mind, about karma, about non-duality, about the illusion of self. The master poured, and the cup filled. The monk continued, about mindfulness, about stillness, about compassion, about enlightenment. The master poured, and the cup overflowed. Tea spilled across the table, onto the floor. "Stop," the monk cried. "Can't you see the cup is already full?" The master looked at him and said quietly, "And so is your mind. We come to wisdom full of opinions, expectations, beliefs. But real understanding requires space, not more knowledge, not louder answers, but the courage to admit, 'I don't know.'" The Buddha said, "It is a man's own mind, not his enemy or foe, that lures him to evil ways. The mind clings to what it knows, and in that clinging, it cannot receive." Zen practice is not about acquiring, it's about clearing. Like a garden we overplant, like a mirror covered in dust. We don't need to add more. We need to step back, breathe, and sweep away what's in the way. Tonight, ask yourself, where are you full? Full of trying, full of tension, full of needing to be someone, to become something. Can you empty just a little? Let go of the need to know. Let go of solving. Let go of making this moment into something else. There is deep nourishment in not knowing. There is freedom in silence, in the space between two thoughts, truth whispers. The Zen path doesn't promise answers. It offers a better question. What happens when you stop trying to fill the cup? Perhaps then, the tea will pour on its own. Perhaps then, you'll taste something new, not from the master, but from within. Empty your cup and drink deeply. A powerful king once heard whispers of a strange holy man who lived far from court. He's no ordinary monk, they said. He doesn't preach. He doesn't teach. He just laughs. Curious and a little skeptical, the king summoned the man to his palace. The monk arrived barefoot, robes threadbare, face lined with sun and time. The court was silent as he entered. Servants gasped, nobles sneered, but the monk simply stood still and looked around, and then let out a long, hearty, childlike laugh. Not a mocking laugh, not wild, but pure, like water breaking free from stone. The king, startled, asked, "Why are you laughing? Don't you know where you are?" The monk smiled. "Yes, in a palace, but also on a spinning rock in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by sky. And still, we argue over crowns." He laughed again. The king frowned. "Do you not fear me?" "No," said the monk, "not because I am brave, but because I see clearly." The king pressed, "Then tell me, what is enlightenment?" The monk's eyes sparkled. He stepped forward, leaned in, and whispered, "This." And then he laughed once more. This moment, this breath, this strange, beautiful absurdity of being alive. This is it. Zen doesn't always arrive like lightning. Sometimes it arrives like laughter. The Buddha said, "Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace." And sometimes that one word is a laugh. Because when you see through the illusion of status, struggle, story, what remains is a kind of cosmic joy, not glee, not escape, but a deep, steady amusement at the dance of life. We try so hard, we suffer so sincerely, and all the while, the moon rises, the waves crash, the birds sing, indifferent and whole. Why do we take ourselves so seriously? Because the ego loves gravity. It wants to be important, to matter, to control. But Zen invites us to loosen, to see our troubles as ripples, our ambitions as footprints in rain, our identities as costumes worn lightly. The laughing monk wasn't foolish. He had simply dropped the weight most of us carry, the weight of pretending, the weight of being someone, the weight of constantly needing to get somewhere else. Tonight, let yourself laugh, if only softly, inwardly. Laugh at the mind that spins stories. Laugh at the need to arrive. Laugh at the idea that you are anything other than what you already are. Not to dismiss life, but to love it fully, without grasping. As Zen Master EQ once wrote, "With no destination, I am never lost." Let that be your final story tonight. You are not broken. You do not need to become. You are the joke and the joy and the gentle echo of laughter beneath it all. And in that, you are free.